Alright, what's poppin', people? We're back. And oh boy, it's time to cover a mod that I would say, especially above the higher skilled level players, gets a lot of hate. And I mean hate for good reasons, because this mod is so good. It's Rotom-C. We're in the cut tonight, boys. So why is Rotom-C a mod that gets looked at? It was just, kind of honestly, a little bit of disgust. It's a mod that every time Eternally PMs me, I could like almost guarantee that he's gonna ask me when I'm banning Rotom-C from the tier. And this is something that I talked about way back when we first put up the revamped VR for this, whole DLC 2 metagame. And I was like, yeah, rise Rotom-C up here because it's Volt Switch. What is blocking it? Question mark. Because if you look at all of the ground types in NU, please point to me the one that does not get just blasted by Rotom-C. Like, it's ridiculous. Normally, when you've got a mod that you're trying to block Volt Switch of, you go to your ground type. Well, with Rotom-C, it's a little bit harder because Leaf Storm, Stab, Mudsdale, who? Good night. Even when we had Gastrodon, Gastrodon, who? Good night. Even Flygon, right? Like, yeah, you don't get O-code by Leaf Storm, but you just are so pressured by it. And obviously, if Rotom-C's, hey, if it's this set right here, which has Will-O-Wisp, you're not in a good spot. You're really not. It's a mod that, if you want to not give it a whole bunch of momentum, it's very hard to avoid. Because it kind of just gets to dictate when it pivots. It doesn't really care if Flygon switches into it, especially since a lot of Flygon don't even run speed for it. And if you're playing with a Scarf Flygon and you try to play too aggressively with that, well, it's taking so much more damage from Leaf Storm than if you were defensive. I'm pretty sure you take 80. That head calc sounds right. But it makes playing against this mod really hard. Essentially, what you're forced to do is rely on these mons like, say, Dragalge or Vileplume. Pokemon that don't get hit too hard by Volt Switch and don't get hit too hard by Leaf Storm. Yes, you still cede momentum to Rotom, but at the very least, you're not just forced into picking or choosing whether or not you lose a Pokemon. And obviously, still, like, you can play aggressively into Rotom-C. If I have a Mudsdale, I can still try to Volt Block. If they're Scarf Rotom, then I'm looking like an absolute genius, and if they're non-Scarf, well, it's still essentially what I'm forcing. It's another prediction. Do I stand as you Volt again? Or do I switch out as you lose Storm? So, it's not to say you can't outplay Rotom-C, it's just trying to is so much more potentially punishing, all because of how strong its Leaf Storm is. And I would say this issue has only gotten more, like, it's gotten greater as the tier is developed. Because when we, back in, like, say, January, I would say Scarf Rotom-C was the most common set, and I think most people would agree. But as the months have progressed, we've seen a huge surge in usage of these sets that don't rely on Scarf, and therefore you just can't hope you get that one Volt Switch play right, and it switch to your, Mudsdale or Gastrodon or Golurk, and just be like, yep, I'm good. It doesn't work like that anymore. Which makes, get the prospect of blocking that Volt Switch really hard. And at the very least, right, obviously Rotom's gotten asked about this gen. We do have a lot of Pokemon that resist its dual stab. I'll talk about them more later on, but you got a lot of good dragons and grass types in the tier, which at least makes sweeping with Rotom-C harder. It's just, again, the unblockable Volt Switch, or die-unblockable Volt Switch, as I've referred to it a lot in the past, makes this mod just so good. So let's talk about sets, right? So I would venture a guess and say that Defog Rotom-C is probably the most common set. As always, I'll go over some moveset variations. But this mod is very good as a fogger. It's not that it has a particularly great, matchup against the common Stealth Rock setters. Obviously, Mudsdale, you have a fantastic one against. Diancie, you've got a pretty good one. Unfortunately, you can't OHKO with Leaf Storm. But you still got a pretty good matchup against. And then at least with Copper you can burn it with Will-O-Wisp and maybe hope that it's not Heat Crash. Sometimes they run Superpower over Heat Crash on Rocks sets. And of course Bronzong, it's like, what? The Mon's not too offensively threatening. So you can generally survive that matchup. Even like Fringe Rockers like, you know, Golurk. Or, what's another Fringe Stealth Rock setter that I can bring up here? Fuck. Let's throw him out here. Runa Regis. You even have decent enough matchups into those just because you have super effective Leaf Storm and you have an immunity to one of their potential stab moves, or just can come in against other moves they commonly carry. And I would still say that the most important part about this set is Volt Switch. Maybe I should refer to this as just a generic pivoting set. This set's so good because, again, since we're not Scarf, every time you try to play a 50-50 on my Volt Switch, I still have another shot to get the 50-50 right on you, as you know, double switch out, and then I just Volt Switch on that, or as you stay in and I Leaf Storm you. You know, you're not in the favorite position ever, especially because, you know, the mons that are coming in to block Volt Switch, out of all of them, only Flygon is going to be able to potentially outspeed and threaten any sort of damage on you. You know, I mean, Scarf Golurk is occasionally a thing, but it's not very common. Mudstell's obviously slower. And then, like, there's really just not any other common Volt blockers from there. Arctozolt, that's just slower as well. It's hard, is what I'm saying. It's really hard to win those situations. Other moveset things you can see, of course. We've seen item lists before. You know, I've done that with AIM in a few of his videos because, well, I don't like Poltergeist switch-ins on my teams that are of the Ghost Resisting or Ghost Immune variety. Instead, I would rather just say, itemless Rotom-Mo, let's go! And I would say a really good thing to do with this kind of set is run Pain Split. Rotom-Mo's HP stat isn't even very high. It's actually really low, it's 50. And so, Pain Split's got really good synergy with you. You can take Copper Rogers down a whole bunch of health. And so that's really good to see. Ooh, do I put that variation? I'll put that variation here. So, next that I want to do is Nasty Plot. Funnily enough, I'd probably say Nasty Plot is even less common than Scarf, but I'm going to rate it a little higher than I rate Scarf here, okay? Is that alright with y'all? You don't get a say anyway. Nasty Plot Rotom-Mo. Despite there being a lot of Pokemon in the tier that do switch into your stab attacks, it's still really good. And a lot of it's just, again, goes back to that Volt Switch Leaf Storm combination. What you get to do is, every time you come in early game, you get to just Volt Switch. And you can slowly get your checks, you know, weakened. You know, things like Goodra, Galgi, Vileplume, Celebi, Decidueye. You just keep Volt Switching on them until late game, where you get to set up a plot and then KO them with whatever move you have. It's honestly as simple as that. Even Guzzlord, you know, I've beaten a Guzzlord with Rotom-Mo before, just by weakening it. It wasn't with Rotom-Mo that game, but, you know, weakening it with teammates. And then eventually punishing it, or taking it out with a +2 Leaf Storm. And because Inu's got a, you know, just plethora of really good wall breakers, especially ones that can pressure grass and dragon types. You know, things like, say, Specs Sylveon, Specs Diancie, even if you want to go there. What's some other ones? Things like Starmie. It's not all too hard to get that damage that you need for Rotom-Mo to eventually blast them back. And again, if we want to talk about moveset variations, Pain Split on Nasty Plot Rotom is really good. You can run, like we said there, I had Thunderbolt there just because it gives you a nice spammable attack. Defog, you can run Plot Defog. It's very roll compression-y, but if you need to do it on a team, it's workable. I've seen some other ones too. I've seen like Stored Power before. I'm not gonna put it here, but I mean I've seen it. Discharge, if you really want to, you can try dropping Volt Switch entirely. I don't recommend it, but it's possible. Like I said, like this is fine. You could do like Subplot with Discharge. That's fine as well. There are a lot of things you can do, and also Discharge, similarly, you know, team support stuff. And then the last set, just good old faithful, old reliable Scarf Rotom-Mo. Again, we mentioned how it's not nearly as good as it once was, especially because you know, Flygon is the predominant ground type, so, you know, you want to be able to still maybe threaten it with a Volt Switch afterwards. Or, it's not that you want to threaten it with the Volt Switch afterwards, it's that you want to be able to just Leaf Storm that immediately. Force a whole bunch of damage onto it and dissuade it. Because since it isn't O-Code by Leaf Storm, people are more willing to switch it into your Rotoms. And Robo is also just still a generally great revenge killer. Again, you revenge kill threats like, say, Salazzle, Focus Energy Inteleon if you're running one of those, Meteor Beam Starmie if you're running one of those. That's a real poggers set. I'm so sorry. But that's a real cool set. There's some other just generally nice monster revenge kill. I mean, something like Surf Edge, you still revenge kill that. Exploud. Strong wall breakers. And you want to talk about, like, other things? I mean, Defog. We've occasionally seen that. Just because roll compression. Nasty plot on Scarf Trick Rotom. You trick away your Scarf, and then you can, like, plot up once you no longer need to be able to revenge kill stuff. And I guess, if we're going to talk about other options here, there's really only one, and I'm going to go back to this set to, like, make mention of it. Let's keep Pain Split here, I suppose. So this will feed into the anti-Blastoise propaganda real hard, but Yachi Berry is something that I've seen a couple of times before for Blastoise. Basically what happens is they go for Ice Beam versus you, because they're not Dark Pulsing or Grass type. And then they go, oh wait, you just got a Yachi Berry and I'm dead to Leaf Storm. So, it's a cool little tech. Not one that sees a whole bunch of use, not one that really should see a whole lot of use, but it is still pretty viable. And then here's our big thing of counterplay, right here. And now I put Flygon at the front, not because Flygon is like a great answer, but because it is the only ground type that is not O-Code by Leaf Storm. That's really it. And I mean, if you're defensive Flygon, I think most should be faster than Rotom-Mow right now. The Dex EV spread's a little outdated. I think if you have Flygon, just outspeed Rotom-Mow. And then even offensive variants of Flygon, I mean, you still Volt Block, and then your U-turns even are doing more, so that's cool. And then we're going to talk about some grass types. Delmise could be in here as well, I just didn't include it because Will-O-Wisp is so much more problematic for it. I guess you could still just have Cleric Support, but you know, I feel like Rotom-Mow has a lot more things that it can do to bother Delmise than these do. So, like, you talk about like a Choice Specs Decidueye, I'll even put that in here. You don't care about the burn, and your Spec Shadow Ball is doing 5 million. And since, you know, there aren't a whole lot of amazing defensive answers to Decidueye in the tier, you do kind of like that sequence if you're getting in versus Rotom-Mow on a turn that's not Volt Switching. You know, maybe your U-turn as well, and then you capitalize on the force switch in, or you just chunk whatever comes in. And of course, Celebi is great because Natural Cure means that even like Will-O-Wisp, burn isn't something you're too worried about, and you've got Recover to stay healthy throughout the game. Well, let's say, if they're Nasty Plot Rotom-Mow, you can start setting up alongside them. Be like, okay, buddy. And then, I'll count this as a poison type. But then again, you know, no, we're going to count this as a grass type and then make this dragon types. How about that? So, and Vileplume's another one, much like Celebi, where, oh, you're setting up? Sure, let me set up with growth. And Vileplume's also just really kind of annoying to deal with for a lot of teams. Because, like, what's Rotom-Mow volting into versus a Vileplume? Probably a Steel type or, like, a Fire type like Talonflame, maybe? Well, you can Strength Sap those. You could Corrosive Gas those and take away their item. You know, even something like Salazzle doesn't want to lose its item if it's what's coming in, or a Dragalge doesn't want to lose its item. There's like a good example of a Pokemon that's able to do kind of like what Rotom does, where Rotom's pretty punishing for most of its switch-ins because they just don't resist Volt, or they don't block Volt Switch, I should say. Vileplume, punishing for its switch-ins just due to its great pool of utility moves. And even something like Sludge Bomb, annoying for maybe a Goodra that comes in. You could fish for a poison like that. And as we go on further, we can see Dragon types, things like Dragalge, for instance. It's really good because Flip Turn, you know, if you get it on a non-Volt Switch turn, you can flip as Rotom-Mow pivots out. Or just fish for a Sludge Bomb poison, set up a T-Spike, you got a lot of things you can do. Goodra is just a really good wall breaker that doesn't care about the Will-O-Wisp burn. And then Guzzlord, because a lot of them do run Rest. It can punish switch-ins with knockoff. You know, that's a common theme here. It's just about punishing whatever's Rotom-Mo switching into. You kind of just acknowledge, okay, I can't block the Volt, so I'm gonna make your Volt switch not as beneficial as you may want it to be. And in my last little one here, I'm doing Steel types. A lot of these aren't amazing answers, primarily because of them hating Will-O-Wisp. But they're still bulky enough to take hits from Rotom-Mo. So, like, you got Copper. Yeah, you take even a +2 hit in Heat Crash. Obviously, it doesn't want to be tricked, but you give and you take. Bronzong. You can Toxic the Rotom-Mo at least. I mean, there's that. Escavalier, it can just straight up Oko Rotom-Mo with Mega Horn. And, I mean, again, with all of these, Cleric Support's still not too hard to come by. So even if your Escavalier gets burned by the Rotom-Mo, you can get that fixed up. And again, Escavalier is a mon like Guzzlord, where it's got moves like Knockoff and Toxic to still take advantage of potential switch-ins, like maybe a Talonflame wants to come in. And I included the rat last, Togedemaru. Not because Togedemaru is a very good Pokemon, but because it says no. I am immune to Volt Switch. I resist Leaf Storm. Fear me, you dumb lawnmower. Maybe when Flygon leaves, we'll see a little bit more of the rat. You know, Diancie plus Togedemaru plus however many of our great ground switches you want. I'm sure that works. And hey, you could even be Wish on Togedemaru. That's going to be it for this one, guys. Rotom-Mo's a really fucking good Pokemon. I'm not saying it doesn't have counterplay, obviously, because we got this huge box here. It's just, I hate that so much of its counterplay, or almost all of its counterplay, just gets Volt Switched on. Or just dies to Leaf Storm. It's just not, it's very unfortunate. But hey, that's going to be it for me. I hope you guys are loving however you're doing right now. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.